Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers and hope you're enjoying your weekend. It's a historic time in Lexington, which is already so rich in history that it was once known as the Athens of the West. Fast forward to 2021 and history is unfolding again. The city is dealing with a deadly pandemic, which has also upended the economy and kept kids out of school. There's been social strife, from police training to anti-Semitic acts to a record number of homicides in the city in 2020. Some new members are joining the Urban County Council, and there is a new fire chief in town. Lexington Mayor Linda Gorton is leading the city and living through these times with all of us, and she joins us here on Kentucky Newsmakers. Good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Bill. Good to be here.
Well, we've made it to 2021, but a lot of the problems of the old year are chasing us into the new one, and the pandemic, of course, Mayor, has changed everything. So we acknowledge the death toll, the large number of cases, and then ask, what is the strategy to get the city through it? And you're making a move on that right now with a new task force, right?
Yes, and this is super important. First of all, people need to realize we're going to be in the pandemic for a few more months. We've got to get enough people, around 75–80% of our people vaccinated, or we will not get that herd immunity. So just this week, I stood up a vaccine task force, and we're very intentional and focused on this. Dr. Craig Humbaugh will co-chair it with Chuck Mix. Chuck is a logistics expert. He has worked in logistics practically his whole life and has experience with several of our largest companies here. You know, the federal government bought all the vaccines, and then they send them to the state, and then the state sends them to the cities. So we can't control that part, but the part we can control is having a really good plan for our own citizens to get vaccinated. So we're working really hard on a transparent, safe, efficient process where everybody will know when it's their turn.
Mayor, were you surprised that this failed to you to essentially come up with a strategy to get the vaccinations out? We had this amazing scientific breakthrough with the vaccines, and then there's a lot of frustration in getting those administered quickly, right?
Yes, lots of frustration. We've actually had a lot of people calling our office saying, when can I get the vaccine? Yeah, I was a little surprised, but this past year has taught me that anything can happen. So when we learned that it was going to be up to the cities to plan for their vaccinations, we hit the ground running, and our team will be really high level planning, and we'll get all this information out to people. We've got a great communications team. And it's really important for people to be patient, because we'll each get our turn, and just to kind of hang in there a little bit longer. And right when you get the vaccine doesn't mean you can take your mask off.
Right.
We have to have everybody vaccinated. That'll take till probably June or July.
Do you have any hint on what this effort might look like? I mean, are we talking large-scale clinics? I know they're having one at Broadbent Arena in Louisville. In some cases, people are saying, well, get it out to the pharmacies and the private doctors and those providers. What do you think Lexington's strategy for getting people vaccinated will ultimately look like as soon as you can get this committee up and running?
Well, the things that you mentioned are all in play. Right now, CVS and Walgreens are vaccinating our nursing home folks. And right now, there is a large clinic going on at Consolidated Baptist. They are vaccinating healthcare workers. We've had a large clinic at the fire training station where we've vaccinated first responders. We have already vaccinated several thousand healthcare workers, first responders, and nursing homes. This is ongoing. That's the first tier. Our citizens can expect large areas sites where they can go and get vaccinated, but they'll have to register ahead of time. It's real important to keep the records. so that we know when everybody's due for their second vaccine, right? And I also want to have a historical record. You know, that's very important. Heaven forbid we'd ever have to do this again, but we need to not reinvent the wheel, right? So all of that is in play, and pharmacies will be involved. Our task force has met once already, and we have a lead pharmacist from UK who's part of our task force. You know, it's filled with knowledgeable people who are going to help us get there. So we're pretty pumped up about it. It's one of the biggest challenges a mayor will ever have.
Well, certainly, and the other side is the economics. Mayor, how much economic collateral damage is there from the shutdowns and the pandemic? You know, Lexington we were rolling right along when things hit, and there was, of course, this vibrant restaurant scene, and now, you know, there's a lot of despair among, especially many in the hospitality industry. Yeah. How long will it take to climb out?
Well, you know, in February, our unemployment rate was about 3%.
Right.
We were on a roll. And you will recall that when the April shutdown came, our unemployment went up to about 35%. Our budget numbers plummeted because we're so highly dependent on our occupational license fee and our net profits from our businesses. So we based the current budget on a $40 million shortfall. That's pretty bad, right? Yeah. And we, for the first time, had to dip into our rainy day fund to help us with our budget. Now, we have received CARES money from the federal government, and without that, we would not have made it. I mean, I just need to be blunt about that. And so what that enabled us to do, my focus right away was first help the community, because we had all those people unemployed and businesses closed. And so we have spent many millions of dollars helping our community. We have spent about, you will remember evictions were a huge issue, and they still are. And we spent about, so far, $1 million on eviction rental assistance so that families wouldn't get tossed out of their home because they couldn't pay their rent.
And that goes to the renters or to the landlords?
Yes, the landlord. It involves landlords and renters. Mm-hmm. And can I say the site, because we've streamlined the process, and yes. I know people still need help. The site, if you need eviction help, is covid19renterhelp.org. And I encourage people to go there and fill out the forms and get help, because we still have a lot of money that we can put toward evictions, and this is high on our priority list.
Mayor, at this time, do you believe that the city of Lexington needs additional federal assistance in order to keep rolling along here? Can you make it without it?
Excuse me, you got me choked up there, Bill. Well, we have received, in December, we received $2 more million from the federal stimulus, and we know we're going to receive more eviction money. Local governments are in this latest stimulus bill. We think that will help us get over the hump. And my team has managed the money very well. And I want to say that very proudly, because we had the challenge of a lifetime with our budget, and we have managed well. The current budget is not down quite as much as we thought it would be. We've still got about 2 more years of challenge with our budget. So we really appreciate the federal stimulus money we have gotten. We've used it well. We've given small business grants. We've, as I said, given the eviction money. We've helped lots of nonprofits. So we were thankful for that. We're working it pretty well.
I'm hearing you say things are stable. Fair to say?
Oh, yes. Things are stable. I am convinced we're going to come out of this in a positive mode. It won't be this year. And I think that's important for our public to understand. We've still got to manage our money as if, we're back there counting every penny, right? And it's our taxpayers' money. So I'm dedicated to that, and my team is also.
Mary, let me ask you this. There has been this ribbon of strife running through these recent months in so many ways. We had the unrest in Louisville after Breonna Taylor's death. It brought demonstrations and some discussions in Lexington. You appointed a commission to look into police training and equity and economic opportunity. Do you now have a blueprint to make a difference there?
We do. We have the commission recommendations were vetted by every one of our commissioners internally. And so they went through and created a template, which ones are short-term, which ones are long-term, which ones require money, which require state legislation, those kinds of things. And we've already been bringing things before the council. We are about to bring to them after, in a couple weeks or another month or so, the implicit bias training for our own 3,000 plus government workers. What that does is it helps you recognize your stereotypes. We all have stereotypes. And whether you're using stereotypes to make decisions, it's very important to recognize that in yourself. And so we're moving forward on that. That was a recommendation. We're moving forward on a permanent commission for racial justice. That is in the works. We are moving forward on several of those recommendations, and I can't thank enough the citizens who worked on that for us. Because if you don't have a plan and a blueprint, you cannot reach any goals.
It was a busy year for the police department. Certainly in 2020 had the most homicides of any year, and the record before that was 2019. How concerned are you about that trend?
Well, of course, I'm very concerned. We had 34 homicides in 2020, and that is a record for us. We think there are more teenagers involved, which is a sad state of affairs. We have ramped up some programs like One Lexington to tackle that issue. We haven't quite seen the bump up that many cities have seen. There are many cities across the country who've seen much more higher bump in homicides, but it is concerning to us. We have a relatively high rate of solving them. In other words, finding the person who committed the homicide. It's a constant effort. Our police chief, Chief Weathers, all of our public safety are on it every day. And so we're going to keep trying to bring that down. It takes citizen help, though, Bill.
Right.
We need citizens who have information to come forward and help us understand what they saw, who they saw, so we can solve those.
And the homicide, that's one metric, and certainly the worst of the metrics. But, there are a lot of concerns about violence in the city, shootings in neighborhoods, 2 children injured recently in gunfire, one of them blinded. What's happening out there?
Yes, there are more random just shots fired is what they call it. And I think part of it, just my sense is, part of it is a symptom of what has happened in 2020. People are having a hard time dealing with this pandemic. And so that's a bit of an issue. And then we've got to get at some point, our children back in school, and children including our teenagers. And, people are dealing with this in different ways. And in many ways, there are a lot of mental issues coming forward and being manifest. So we still, again, need help from our community. Our police are very concerned about this and are working every day on it. Laura Hatfield in my office with One Lexington works every day on this kind of violence. And we are a growing city. You know, you throw that in the mix, we continue to grow through this pandemic.
I know you have also spoken out about and raised concerns about some of the anti-Semitic acts that we have seen recently in town as well, which is another disturbing thing. And many in the faith community and others have been very disturbed by that.
Yes, it is. I mean, just quite honestly, it's terrible. There's no place for that. You know, I think it's a manifestation of people taking their biases and acting on them. And, you know, whether it's racial slurs or anti-Semitic actions or slurs, it's just not how we should be treating other people. I mean, I wasn't raised that way. Lots of people here weren't raised that way. We're not known for that. So that message needs to keep going out, that is not acceptable here.
Lexington Mayor Linda Gorton is with us. We'll be back in a moment. We'll ask her a few more questions, some comings and goings in City Hall. And we're back on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers as we visit with Lexington Mayor Linda Gorton and talk about a lot of issues going on in the city, and appreciate her candor with many of the things that the city is facing. You had an interesting Christmas break, Mayor. You told us you got a new knee, right?
I did. I got a total knee replacement. I'm good for 20 more years.
Well, I hope you're doing okay with that. Lexington has a new fire chief, and you looked all over the country, and you came home and found somebody right there already as an assistant chief.
Yes, we did a national search, and lo and behold, Chief Jason Wells, right here at home, is our new chief. He's wonderful. He's 25 years on our fire department, which, as everybody knows, is one of the best in the country. He has the experience, the leadership, the training. He's highly respected by his firefighters. I heard this over and over when they found out he was in the process of interviewing, and he will take us into the future very well. We've got a lot of challenges. You know, we have all these vaccines to administer, and his paramedics will be involved in that. We've got budget challenges, as we talked about, and it's not an easy road, but he will be a wonderful leader. I have great confidence in him, and he's awesome. He's about finished his first week.
All right. Well, and everybody wishing him well. Some new members on the new council, and some old faces departing after a time. So that's always a bittersweet time when you have some new members, but also maybe some new ideas, right?
Yes. Oh, I think so. We lost two longtime council members, Councilmember Masadi and Councilmember Farmer, who had lots of depth and experience. We've gained the 6th, the 3rd, the 5th, and they bring new, fresh perspectives. And I think that's always a good thing, you know? And so I'm looking forward to working with them. I met with each of them after the election and really enjoyed our conversations. So.
Councilman Chuck Ellinger Sr. passed away in December, fondly remembered as much as anything for the way he treated people, you know, and I think when we're in a time like this, you really come to value people who had that way with others.
Yes, I describe him as he was just a plain good man, you know. Mm-hmm. He served his community. He served the College of Dentistry at the University of Kentucky. He was greatly admired by all kinds of people. So we do value that in our community.
You know, we've talked about that it'll be a few more months. The masks will be part of our lives for a time yet to be determined, and we do have the vaccines, and there's hope out there. What is it that you most look forward to being able to do when this is finally behind us?
Well, there are two things right off the top of my head. I want to go out to dinner with my friends.
Right.
I really enjoy doing that. My husband and I, you know, that's something we like. And then I want to be able to travel to see my family, my children, my grandchildren. I have 5 grandchildren, and we didn't get together for either holiday, and that's hard for families. And just to get out and talk to people, and I'm sort of a hugger, so I want to give some of my good friends a big hug.
Right. At least a handshake, right?
At least, yeah. When I first came into office, just real quickly, the first thing I did as a nurse was have hand sanitizer put on every conference table. That was 2019. Lo and behold, we're still using it.
There you go. Mayor, I want to thank you very much for taking some time and getting us up to date and getting us into this new year. We'll see how it all goes, right?
Right, very good. Thank you for having me, Bill.
We appreciate it. And we hope you'll stay with us on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. We'll be back. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. The nation is now counting COVID cases by the tens of millions. Many hospitals are reaching breaking points, and new coronavirus strains could keep infections spiraling out of control. Our chief national political analyst Greta Van Susteren explains.
Hello, I'm Greta Van Susteren, and here is your full court fast break. The nation ravaged by pandemic, passing one grim milestone after another. This week, the U.S. topping 21 million confirmed COVID infections, setting new records for daily deaths and hospital cases. In California's Los Angeles County, a COVID patient dies every 15 minutes. Hospital ICUs there are at full capacity. Ambulance crews have stopped transporting people with low chance of survival. In Arizona, several hospitals are operating at over 120% of licensed bed capacity. And Rhode Island, the smallest state in the nation, has one of the highest infection rates in the world. Now the deadly coronavirus mutating. Experts have already found 2 new and more contagious strains. The new strains do not appear to increase the risk of death and severe illness, but it's unclear how well the new COVID vaccines will work against them. One new strain emerged in the UK, and already the new strain has been detected here in the US and nearly 40 other countries. The other variant was identified in South Africa and is making its way around the globe. Meanwhile, the CDC says it is trying to boost the coronavirus genome sequencing so it can look for new mutations. Want more full court press? Tune in Sunday. We bring politics home, covering the national stories that impact you.
And remember that you can catch Full Court Press with Greta Van Susteren this morning at 11:30 on WKYT. Before we go, the events at the Capitol on Wednesday have shaken many, and people across the country are calling for action. Kentucky's leaders have weighed in on the issue. U.S. Representative Andy Barr was in his office when things got violent. Police officers moved him to an undisclosed location. Barr says he understands that some people were frustrated with the 2020 election, but what happened Wednesday, he says, was wrong.
We resolve our differences at the ballot box and through our democratic institutions, not through violence, whether it was storming the Capitol or some of the events that we've seen in Portland over the summer and other cities.
Barr says the coming days are a chance for Americans to pull together. Many of Kentucky's other members of Congress shared their thoughts on Twitter. Representative Thomas Massey initially tweeted, quote, "I'm safe." The day after the incident, he advocated for lawmakers to be able to carry guns at the Capitol. He tweeted, quote, "The next member who argues congressmen shouldn't be allowed to carry firearms at work needs to be laughed out of the Capitol. Several of us were glad to be armed while barricaded for hours in our offices with our staff." Democratic Representative John Yarmouth tweeted that he was safe and added, "This is not who we are as Americans." Later he said President Trump needs to be removed from office. Thursday he said in a tweet, quote, "I know it's been said and should go without saying, but it can't be said enough. If police met a black mob breaking windows at the Capitol, we'd still be cleaning up blood today." Senator Rand Paul tweeted, quote, "Violence and mob rule is wrong and un-American, and it will not bring about election reform. Today's mayhem sets back any intelligent debate for a generation. Just stop it." End quote. The next quote he tweeted said, I hope as the nation's anger cools, we can channel that energy into essential electoral reforms in every state. Representative Barr said in a statement later, today's events at the U.S. Capitol are tragic, outrageous, and devastating. What is happening at the Capitol is not who we are as a nation. It needs to stop now. Representative Hal Rogers said in a statement, quote, violence is never the answer. As my staff and I safely shelter in place, I am appalled to see Americans storming the Capitol in an effort to disrupt our very foundation of democracy, end quote. All of the carnage in the Capitol did not stop the counting of electoral votes. When the voting began, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky addressed his colleagues on the Senate floor.
We will not be kept out of this chamber by thugs, mobs, or threats. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation. We are back at our posts. We will discharge our duty under the Constitution and for our nation.
The senator added that this process has taken place every 4 years, even during times of hardship and war. That is Kentucky Newsmakers. We do want to thank you for joining us, and of course invite you to join us bright and early this week for WKYT This Morning, for mid-morning at 10, and for WKYT News at noon. We have updates always for you on WKYT.com, and you can follow me for some of the political happenings in Kentucky news on KY Newsmakers on Twitter. And that is our program for today. Thank you for joining us, and you make it a good week ahead.